they started to encourage my parents to dance. And I was like, what is this about? And then they kept saying, oh, no, we haven't danced together in years. And they said, no, and they put on some music. And I saw them get up slowly and move towards one another. And they slowly started to dance. And they were really good. And they were in sync in a way that they never were in real life. But for this moment, they seemed so happy, and they were laughing at the fact that they were even doing it and doing it so well. And then everybody applauded. And then they separated and went to other sides of the room.
Prepare your ears, humans. Happy, Sad, Confused begins now.
Hey guys, Josh here. Welcome to another edition of Happy, Sad, Confused. Another special one for you guys today. A first-time guest on the podcast. What a legend. Nathan Lane, front and center, about to enter your eyes and ears through this career conversation. Truly a delight to get to know Nathan, and I think you guys are going to really dig this. He is a consummate storyteller, an entertainer, and a great actor to boot. So there's a lot to chat about. That's the main event on Happy, Sad, Confused coming up in just a minute. Before that, the usual reminders and acknowledgments, etc. One thing I didn't mention on the last episode I wanted to thank people for, and if you haven't checked this out, please do. We debuted our first episode, maybe we'll make more, that's the big question, of Dog Date. Yes, that's me and a celebrity and our dogs hanging out, and the great Rachel Zegler joined me for a fun walk through Central Park. Lenny was her dog, is the most adorable dog. Lucy, my dog, my precious, came with us, and such a great reception from you guys. The full episode is on YouTube here, but there are bits and bobs on Instagram and other places, and it's been really fun to see people respond so well to this. It was made with love and passion, and I desperately want to do more. We're trying to figure out if we can. We'll see. Hey, if you're listening or watching this and you know somebody that wants to sponsor a dog celebrity show, hit me up, guys, in the comments. DM me, do something. I'm out there because all I want to do, I'm not making a dog celebrity show to make money. I'm doing it because I want to do it. So we just kind of need to figure out if it's tenable. If Purina, I don't know, you're out there, you want to pay for a celebrity dog show? I can book the hell out of this. I can get celebrities and their dogs on my show, guys. Anyway, that's all I'm saying. All of which is to say thank you for checking out the Rachel Zegler episode of Dog Date. And if you haven't already, check it out. Usual reminders, upcoming events, April 6th, Miami, Florida, me and Paul Feig. Get your tickets now. Information's in the show notes. April 12th, Chicago, a whole bunch of panels I'm moderating for C2E2, the same folks that do New York Comic Con, and many more great events. A reunion of the Breakfast Club, John Boyega, Once Upon a Time, a RoboCop reunion. It's going to be a big packed day, so come on out in Chicago and say hi. As always, patreon.com, your home for all things Josh Horowitz and Happy, Sad, Confused, early access, autographed posters, bonus materials, all the fun stuff. Patreon.com/Happy, Sad, Confused. We got price levels for everybody. Give it a shot. Go to the lowest level. See if it's worth your while. If it's not, I love you anyway. But it helps keeps the train running at Happy, Sad, Confused Station. I don't know. End of metaphor. Okay. Main event. Nathan Lane. This was a fantastic special night. We did this at Symphony Space, a beautiful theater on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, Upper West Side where I was born and raised, Upper West Side where Nathan Lane lives now. So it had a lot of sentimental value. It was a packed house. And I mean, what can I say about Nathan Lane? You'll see in this conversation, but the man has done it all. On Broadway, obviously, the producers, Guys and Dolls, but also Angels in America. He can do drama, he can do comedy. In film, The Lion King and Birdcage, television, Emmy winner for Only Murders in the Building. And he is currently starring in the new show he was there to promote, actually, Mid-Century Modern, which is a really fun traditional kind of sitcom, but very funny. It's from the makers of Will and Grace, and Ryan Murphy, and has him and Matt Bomer and the late great Linda Lavin. Check it out. It drops on March 28th on Hulu, and yeah, I mean, you're gonna hear Nathan Lane he's kind of like, I don't know. He's just a consummate storyteller. He's just got the timing down. He just makes you smile, made me smile. So this was a real special one for me. I hope you guys enjoy it. And yeah, without any further ado, Symphony Space, New York City. Here's me and Nathan Lane.
Hello, Symphony Space. Thank you guys for being here. My name's Josh Horowitz. If you haven't been to one of my shows before, you're inside my podcast. I'm sorry, you're in it now. It's called Happy, Sad, Confused. And I've been privileged enough over the years to be at Symphony Space a number of times. It is always such an honor to be here. I grew up just a few blocks away, so this is always like coming home. And it's a beautiful theater, and again, thank you. It's also a really special night because this is a first-time guest on the podcast, and I'm going to say these nice things to his face too, but I'm going to say it right now. Nathan Lane is a living legend. He can do anything. He is a Tony winner, an Emmy winner. He can do drama. He can do comedy. He has entertained all of you many times. I don't know a life without entertainment that involves Nathan Lane. His new series, you're going to love it, is called Mid-Century Modern. It is coming very soon on Hulu. We're going to talk about that and a great many things. Please give a warm Symphony Space welcome to the one and only, the legend. It's Nathan Lane, everybody.
Hi. Oh, you have the clock, and
yeah.
go!
Exactly. Nathan, Symphony Space, Nathan. Thank you for doing this, sir.
Sure, thanks for having me.
I know you're probably ill at ease in front of an audience after all these years.
No, I like having people watch.
Is it just white noise to you at this point? Because you have heard so much applause in your storied 50 years of entertainment. I mean, has there been a more celebrated person walking out to applause than Nathan Lane? What does it mean to you?
Sure. Many. But it's nice. It's lovely that, people appreciate what you do. Now, plumbers don't get that, so it's a lovely fringe benefit of being in the arts.
Do you ever experience anything resembling stage fright at this point? What's a scenario where Nathan Lane feels ill at ease?
I have a little bit. Famously, there was Olivier went through a period of stage fright where he would just tell people, "Don't look me in the eye when we're on stage together. Otherwise, I'll go up." There were two different plays where it happened. A Simon Gray play called Butley, and a David Mamet play called November, where I had long monologues. Like in November, there were phone calls that I would, for 3.5 pages, where no one was talking but me, and I was having a conversation with someone, and I usually enjoy those kinds of things. I'm good at phone calls. I am. I really am. It's sort of a special skills. Good at phone calls. Now it seems quite antiquated, but just texts me on
You're good
stage.
at that too.
Yeah, reading texts. Yeah, but I got into this fear that I wouldn't remember, and so before each show, I would go down and I would go through everything in my head, and yeah, and I sort of worked my way through it. But both times, it was like I had a lot to say, and it got me for a little bit.
Yeah, I would imagine you don't go up on a line at this stage in your career. That doesn't happen.
Well, I'm sure it does. I mean, there are, over the years. Now, I haven't done a play now in a few years, but it's like a thing that it's like you're when it happens, there's this adrenaline and fear that goes through your body where you go, I don't know, what am I going to say? I know I have to say something, and then it just comes for some reason, and thankfully. But I mean, I'd like to think I'm fairly improvisational, and if I did go up badly, I could just chat for a while. I do remember Swoosie Kurtz, the wonderful Swoosie Kurtz, telling me a story about she had done a play with this older British character actor who constantly went up on his lines, and when he would just turn to her and say, "So, how's your father?"
It works in any context, for any
right?
play. Yeah.
So it's all on them.
Right.
So how's your father?
Downright rude. Wow. Okay, before we get to Mid-Century Modern, which is a wonderful new series from the creators of Will and Grace, Ryan Murphy, an amazing ensemble, we are on the Upper West Side, and when I was doing my copious research, correct me if I'm wrong, Nathan, was your first place in New York, was it the Upper West Side? Does this bring back some memories?
Yes, it was. And I'm now, I've lived for 20 years in Tribeca, but I'm now back on the Upper West Side. But thank you. I'm sure I've seen you at Cinderella. I lived on 70, I want to say 77th and between Broadway and West End or something like that. Yeah, it was a long time ago. I came to New York in the late 70s, like 78, 79, and I shared an apartment with a young actress.
Do you think about that, like do you romanticize that time, or do you recall the difficulties of that time of a young up-and-coming actor at this point?
I don't romanticize it because it was difficult. I was poor and struggling, and it was, trying to make ends meet and doing odd jobs, singing telegrams. And I used to do surveys for the Harris Poll. I used to interview farmers and ask them what insecticide they were using. I would call, and you would hear, and I was always so embarrassed by this, and you would hear, like the wife would say, well, he's out in the field right now. I don't know. And then you would hear Ab, screaming, and then 10 minutes later, guy would get on the phone and say, yeah. Hi, Mr. Summers. What kind of insecticide are you using? And he said, I'm going to come to New York and kill you. I used to, I sold things by phone. Something called the Bullworker, which was an isometric plastic. It was obviously some toy that was made by Mattel that didn't work, and they turned it into an isometric people to do exercise. I sold that. TV Guide I sold by phone, and then political surveys.
Man of many talents. You can do it all.
Well, it was interesting because it was improvisation,
right.
And they would give you a script. So no matter what the person said, you would have a response. I can always tell when someone calls me, and it's one of we'd like to talk to you, and you know that if you say, I really don't have time, well, you might have time for this.
Right. How's your father?
Yeah. So, how's your father?
All right, let's talk about this wonderful new series. It is called Mid-Century Modern. I talked a little bit about the pedigree of the show. It's also a bit of a full circle moment, if you'll allow me. Over 40 years ago, you did do a sitcom that was called, ironically, this could be the name of this sitcom too. One of the Boys was the name of the sitcom.
Oh yeah, but that wasn't my fault. That was fucking Mickey Rooney's show. I was a kid. They hired
Dana Carvey.
Dana Carvey, yes. It was an eclectic group. Scatman Crothers. Scatman Crothers. I once said to him, Scatman, how do you look so young? How do you stay so fit? How do you do it? And he said, Nathan, I'll tell you, every morning I get up and I take a nice hot shower, and then I smoke a big fucking joint. and I'm ready to face the day. Yeah, well, that was, I knew going into that was not going to go beyond 13 episodes. It was just one of those shows. That was a show created by Saul Turtletub and Bernie Orenstein, who had written it for Jack Albertson, because they had done Chico and the Man with him, and then he died, and then someone decided, because Mickey Rooney was having a renaissance at the time, he was doing Sugar Babies and the Black Stallion, and so he was also doing Sugar Babies at the same time. He was doing 8 shows a week, and thought, in my spare time during the day, I'll do a situation comedy. Anyway, it was not a good show.
I've heard Dana talk about it. Sounds like
Dana was traumatized for life by that.
He's talked about Mickey would bring a gun. Mickey sounded like a character, to say the least.
Oh, he was nuts. He was totally traumatized with those years at MGM. Have another pill, Mickey, and do the number. It was just crazy. So he kind of never grew up. And he was, he was enjoying this renaissance, because, he had been out doing dinner theater, and, he really struggled for quite a while. And then he had this moment again that was very nice, and he was crazy. He would, and he was not a born again Christian. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but there was. And then meanwhile, he was betting on horses. He was just so crazy. Oh, there's stories I could tell you, but
we're extending by an hour tonight.
Yeah.
One more, yeah. Okay, let's talk about this. This is a slightly different experience, I would imagine.
I'll say. Well, here's the thing. I haven't done one of these in a very long time. My history with the multicam is dicey, to say the least, and it hasn't worked. So I was doing this came about because of Ryan Murphy. I was doing this miniseries, Monsters, about the Menendez brothers, and he called to say he had this script. From the creators of Will and Grace, Max Muchnick and David Cohan, and that he had never done a multicam before, but he read the script and said, if I'm going to do one, this is the one I'd like to do, and they kind of wrote it with you in mind. And so, and he said, it's sort of the gay Golden Girls, and I was, which is, I think there's already been a gay Golden Girls. It was called the Golden Girls. So I was, I was like, it's Ryan Murphy. So I said, oh, sure, it sounds great. But inside I was, thinking, oh, God, help me. And then I read it, and it was hilarious. It was screamingly funny and very smartly set up. And you saw where the show had the potential to continue, and that's hard to do in a pilot. Pilots are the most difficult because you are setting up the story and the characters, and it's hard to do all that and be funny. But this, they accomplished it. So that's where it started. And what else you want to know?
That's it. Thanks, everybody. No. We were saying backstage also, it's directed by the great Jimmy Burrows. If you guys don't know, he's directed every great sitcom you've loved in the history of television.
The legendary Jimmy Burrows. He had directed all of Will and Grace, too, and so he directed all 10 of these episodes, and he's just amazing. He's 81, but, he's just amazing. And... look, this is, as William Goldman famously said, nobody knows anything. But this was an incredibly happy experience. And it was that thing of, look, it's all about the writing. Yeah. It all comes down to the writing. You've got to have that, or you don't have anything. And just the kind of miracle of casting all of these people, Matt Bomer, Nathan Lee Graham, just phenomenal actors, and the late, great Linda Lavin, who we had always wanted to work together. And And so it was just kind of this magical experience. It went, so I would say to my husband, he said, "How's it going?" And I would say, "It's going so well, it's almost unnerving."
When's the other shoe going to drop? Yeah.
So that's, you know what, that's all you, in anything in show business, that's all you have is the experience, you know, is what you take away from it. And then whatever happens will happen, and that's not up to me. But it has been the happiest experience I've had ever in television. And a lot of it has to do with when you're working with some of the best people who have ever done this form, it makes a huge difference.
Well, you know the writing's spot on when you read your character name, and it's Bunny Schneiderman.
Bunny Schneiderman.
Half the work is done right there.
I believe I had a joke where I said, Bunny, someone asked me, he says, Bunny Schneiderman, say it soft and it's almost like praying. But Bunny Schneiderman, yes, he is a very wealthy and successful manufacturer of women's bras. He has like 50 stores across the country called the Bunny Hutch. And he's living in Palm Springs in this huge house with his mother, played by Linda Lavin Sybil, and the show opens at the funeral of a very close friend of his named George, and his two other closest friends, Jerry and Arthur, played by Matt Bomer and Nathan Lee Graham, are all gathered, and they come back to his house. And you know, my character is he's sort of lonely. He has one foot in retirement. He's never had the great love of his life, and so he's having such a great time with these two friends. He, on the spur of the moment, says, why can't this be the rest of our lives? And he suggests, you know, the reasoning behind, you're too poor to live in New York, and he's a Matt Bomer, who I think will be the revelation for a lot of people because he's so hilarious in this part. He plays this sort of dim-witted sexpot airline steward. So I talked them into moving in with me, and then of course there are some complications, but it becomes about this chosen family, and these three. I wouldn't say they're golden. I'm the only golden girl, but it's three gay men at different stages of their lives, and negotiating, getting older, and try to, I guess, be viable in the marketplace, and it's great fun, and the writing is incredibly smart, and the wonderful thing on Hulu is that we have this freedom in terms of language and situation, and so I used to think Will and Grace were pushing the boundaries with that, but we go much further. To say the least. And so maybe it's the right time for something like that.
There you go.
To push a few boundaries.
So, okay, we do have the luxury of a bit of time, so we're going to do a little bit of This Is Your Life, Nathan Lane. Lie back. I don't know if that seat reclines a little bit, but get comfortable. What do you want to say about your parents? This is a big question because this really formed you. Your parents, I know I've read a lot about them. It was an interesting childhood, a unique childhood to say the least. How do you think, I mean, this is a short question with a long answer. How did they form the man I see today, the artist I see today?
How did they form the man you see today? Well, that's, I've been trying to write a memoir. They gave him the money, so I'm just trying. But it's interesting to start to look back at those days. My mother, on her wedding day, her mother, my grandmother, who I was very close to, took my mother aside and said, "You're making the biggest mistake of your life." Yeah, my father was, he sang. He was a truck driver for many years, and then he got involved in local politics. And my mother she worked as a secretary. At first, she worked at Manischewitz. She worked at for Manischewitz, and then she became a secretary at the prosecutor's office in Jersey City. She was part of a secretarial pool for all the lawyers. And anyway, when my father got involved in politics, and then it didn't go so well, and he started drinking very heavily, and he became an alcoholic. And it was really, my mother was raising three. I have two older brothers. And she had me late in life. She was 40 years old when I was an accident. They went to a wedding and had a couple of drinks and, had sex for the first time in decades. And the future light of Broadway came along. So let's fuck until we have a Tony Award winner. So when I came along, their marriage was at its worst, and he was, the only time I would see him was when he was drunk most of the time. I remember this one morning going to school, and it was a really sunny day, and I'm walking down the street, and there was this place called the Stegman Street Tavern, and the back door was open, and the sun was sort of shining into this bar, and I stopped, and I saw that it was my father who was sweeping up, obviously to pay for drinks, perhaps, and he sensed that somebody was looking at him, and he turned around, and we just stood there and stared at each other, and he didn't say anything to me. He didn't come out, and I didn't say anything. We just stared at each other, and then he went back to sweeping, and I went on to school. And so I didn't really have a relationship with him as I did with my mother, but how that, look, both myself and my two brothers, we all bear the scars of what went on, and yet we've survived and have succeeded, and I think there's part of me that probably has inherited whatever the performing side of my father, whatever that might have been, or at least maybe that's what I think might have been, yeah, it's those, I think in some ways their terribly unhappy marriage probably drove me into the arts, into show business,
Right.
or plays.
It was an escape. Yeah.
It was an escape. I will tell you this is so depressing hearing about this sad marriage, but there was one time they were together. She got him to go to AA a couple of times, and we went to a holiday party and at her brother's, and my mother's family looked down on my father, and because he was an alcoholic, and yet all of my mother's siblings were all alcoholics. And my father used to say they could drink me under the table any day. Anyway, they went. He was sober, and they were at this holiday party, and then for some reason we were at my uncle's house in the suburbs, in Plainfield, New Jersey, who I found very glamorous, and they had a dining room table, and I thought wow, that's something. That's fancy, when you have a dining room table, and they were playing music, and then they started to encourage my parents to dance. And I was like, what is this about? And then they kept saying, oh, no, we haven't danced together in years. And they said, no, and they put on some music. And they kept saying, do the Peabody. You're always so great at the Peabody, which is a kind of rather difficult dance. And I saw them get up slowly and move towards one another. And they slowly started to dance, and they were really good, and they were in sync in a way that they never were in real life. But for this moment, they seemed so happy, and they were laughing, at the fact that they were even doing it and doing it so well, and then everybody applauded, and then they separated and went to other sides of the room.
Beautiful memory. Thanks for sharing that. I'm struck when you talk about your early days of your career. When I've heard you talk about it, there were struggles. There was a path as you started to work, but it sounds like you always had this confidence that it was going to work out. Is that fair to say that you, and I guess what
Well, I came from an alcoholic and a manic depressive.
It's all connected, there you go.
I had some, I don't know why. Yes, I did think, it's all gonna work out. I don't know why I had that, I can't even call it confidence. It was just some part of me that said, it's gonna work out. This is, and I used to visualize it as if it was a movie. And this was the beginning of the movie, and when I'm struggling and starving and it, it seemed impossible, and because I had no show business connections whatsoever. And I mean, at least in my case, there's all those stories of people going into show business and everybody saying, no, don't do that. And my family was like, sure, see if you can make some money and then give me some. So yeah, it was, and my oldest brother Dan, who's really the one who encouraged my interest in the theater and was incredibly supportive and sort of played a paternal role in my early life, encouraged it, so yes, there was that. Somehow I thought I was gonna make it.
Did you see, so when I'm looking at your work, for instance, in the 80s, you make your Broadway debut with the great George C. Scott. You're doing kind of bit things in television here and there. Did you see a path in TV and film? When did that emerge as something that felt like a viable career, or did it feel like it was going to be a life on stage at that time?
TV and film just seemed so far away, and I don't know why, it was just always about the theater. I guess that's what was my initial interest, and my brother took me to see theater in New York, and that's what fascinated me, that whole process, and watching the Tony Awards on television as a kid. And so those people, fascinated me. Robert Preston and Rex Harrison and Zero Mostel and all of those, Angela Lansbury and on and on. So the TV and film was, I just never, to be honest, I didn't really pursue it all that much. I mean, if something came up, I'd audition in the beginning. You audition for everything and see where it leads. But I always thought you would learn more working in the theater in terms of acting.
Well, I was going to say, if you go down the YouTube rabbit hole, you can see your guest starring spot on Miami Vice as Morty Price, for instance. That's forever on the internet.
Well, sure. Bring that up. Why don't you?
I'm not going to show it, don't worry.
No,
but,
good.
I mean, you talk about finding the breadth of work. is it fair to say Terrence McNally was the one that kind of saw a different side of you, or gave you the opportunity that you weren't getting to show a different side of you on stage, and that obviously eventually led to greater work in film?
Yeah, I mean, Terrence and a director named John Tellinger. I had done a play, this Simon Gray play called The Comet Pursuit, and I did it first at Long Wharf, and then we did it in LA, and then I did it off Broadway. But John Tellinger was working at the Long Wharf at that time, and he was a literary manager, and then he was he had been an actor, and he was moving into directing, and so he's the one who, John Tellinger cast me in the John Robin Bates's first play in New York, the Film Society, and he was really the one who, said to me, you're more than just funny, and then it was he was directing this play by Terrence called The Lisbon Traviata at the Manhattan Theater Club, and they were looking for a much older actor, and they weren't finding anybody that they liked, and it was a sort of a last-minute thing that John Tellinger said, well, what about Nathan? And Terrence was like, well, I love Nathan, but I think he's too young. But they decided to bring me in, and then I auditioned, and then they gave me the part, and that was life-changing.
Before we come to what became an amazing run as you started to do more and more film, I do want to mention one Broadway show that personally meant a lot to me, and I'm sure many saw it. It was a production of Guys and Dolls, which I was a teenager when I saw that famous production, and it was the most entertaining thing I'd ever seen on a stage, and I'm sure many share that memory. That was kind of a bit of a phenomenon, and you were in other phenomenon that came on stage afterwards, but what do you remember of being in the eye of that storm at the time? This classic show, this classic production, what did it feel like at the time?
I know, it's very fondly remembered, well, it's Guys and Dolls, so it's arguably the greatest musical comedy ever written, other than Gypsy. So it's sort of the quintessential musical, as my friend Louis Stadlin likes to say, it's sort of he thinks it's the greatest treatise ever written about the issues between men and women, he always says he could happily spend the rest of his life on the road doing Guys and Dolls. It's just, it's the show. It's the material. It was just it was a show that I loved. I had played Nathan Detroit in a non-equity dinner theater when I was 21 at the Meadowbrook Dinner Theater in Cedar Grove, New Jersey.
Oh, another great production.
Great production. Yeah. And then when I joined Actors Equity, my name was Joseph Lane. There was already a Joseph Lane, and they said, you'll have to change your name, which was very traumatic. And they said, oh, take your time. The woman said, take your time, come back. And I said, no, just give me a minute. And I sat down on a bench across from her little window, and I had played Nathan, and I had played Benjamin Franklin in 1776 in non-equity summer stock, and I thought I'll either be Benjamin or Nathan Lane, and then I thought it had a better rhythm, and I said I'll be Nathan Lane. So to get to finally do it in a big time Broadway revival directed by Jerry Zaks, and it's great material, and yet there was a lot of pressure on that production, because everybody would basically say, yeah, you're doing Guys and Dolls, don't fuck it up. And it hadn't been done in a long time. The last one had been in the late 70s. Abe Burrows directed an all black production of it, which I saw, which was great. And so there was that. It was a lot of pressure, and all eyes were on that revival. And then yeah, I mean, it had it was a journey to finding it. It was designed very boldly by Tony Walton and William Ivey Long, and you couldn't walk on into the small independent film version of Guys and Dolls. You had to live up to these sets, and it was so brightly. It was like all in Technicolor, so you had to come on and take the stage, and it took all of previews to figure that out, but that show is a gift to any actor.
I still can't believe they haven't done another film version of Guys and Dolls. I feel
they
like,
are going to do
well,
it.
They've been talking about it.
I know they keep talking, but I think this one is going to have Rob Marshall
Right.
is going to do it.
Long overdue. To this day, do children recognize your voice from The Lion King? Does that ever happen out of context?
No, children could care less. Children have other issues that they're dealing with.
parents
It's
say this
parents.
is- yeah, exactly.
Parents used to say that, and would say, "This is the guy who did this." They don't do it anymore, really. But when the movie had come out, yeah, people would say, "This is the guy who did the voice," and kids would just look at you like I ate Timon, and well, where's Timon? That was, and that was sort of happened around Guys and Dolls. We were doing Ernie Sabella, who was the voice of Pumbaa, the warthog. He and I were doing Guys and Dolls at the time, and we both auditioned for the hyenas. And I had said, let us read together. It'll make it easier because there's 3 hyenas talking. And then we left and thought, well, that'll never happen. And then they called us and said, we want you to play these 2 comic characters. And so when we went in and they showed us the drawings of Timon and Pumbaa, I said, well, what do you want? What do you want them to sound like? And so they were saying, well, you're doing Guys and Dolls. And he said, they're kind of like Damon Runyon characters, they're the comic relief. But you should be, they said to me, you should talk in a higher pitch and Ernie should be in a lower pitch to differentiate. And Ernie sort of found this combination of, he always says, it's a combination of the rhythms of this character actor no one here would probably remember, called Wallace Beery. So Ernie would, he would, when he's, kid, he's doing Wallace Beery. But then when he gets excited, he gets, and it's very high. He's doing Michael Gazzo from The Godfather. It's very elaborate vocal stuff Ernie is doing. And then I just, decided to be Jewish and from Brooklyn.
It worked. It worked.
Yeah.
So that's somewhat of an unlikely phenomenon. And then there's a film that to this day I'm sure comes up almost every day, The Birdcage, that has every single element. And you never know if it's going to work out, but certainly it had a lot going for it between Mike Nichols and Elaine May. Obviously, the original production, La Cage aux Folles, you and Robin, Gene Hackman, the late great Gene Hackman. But what an opportunity for you to get that kind of a role front and center in a film with that pedigree.
Sure.
Did it feel like that in the moment? Like this is, I'm getting my shot.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, and the joke is I had to turn it down. Because they were building, Jerry Zaks was building a production of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum around me. And it was going to be a conflict with this film that Mike Nichols was going to make. And so I had to say to him, after all of this build-up, and I'd done a screen test and the whole thing, and I had to say, I can't, it's not going to work out. I can't leave them in the lurch, it would be unethical. And then Mike Nichols wouldn't let it go. And, Scott Rudin was producing this production of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, and who I knew, So Mike would call me. He called me once. He was like on vacation in Ireland, and I was in the dressing room for Laughter on the 23rd Floor, this Neil Simon play, and he said, dear boy, I keep seeing people, but I just think you're the guy to play this part. And I said, I would love to do it. I said, but I have no power here. You're Mike Nichols. Perhaps if you called Scott Rudin, an agreement could be made. But I wouldn't know about such things. And then the next morning, Scott Rudin called and said, you really want to do this movie? And I was like, yeah, why wouldn't I want to do a movie? Directed by Mike Nichols, written by Elaine May, starring Robin Williams. That would be a foolish thing to turn down. He said, you realize we're going to have to postpone by a year. And I said, I realize that. I said, I did turn it down. So he said, okay. And so it's really thanks to Scott Rudin that I was able to do the film. And then it actually paid off, because by the time we opened the show the following year, the movie had come out, and it I wasn't just this New York actor making good, but it was, the guy in the dress is now in a toga.
He also, it strikes me, like the narrative of your career, it's like, this actor who can entertain audiences in every possible way and be so wonderfully comedic, but then also shows off, especially in the last 15 years, this dramatic side. That's what Robin did. Robin was the funniest man on the planet, and somehow also changed the narrative for himself. Do you think about that? Like, was he almost a model for you as you kind of navigated your own career, your own path?
Well, not consciously, no, but is certainly for me. There was a period where. How much time do we have? There was a period where I was doing a musical on Broadway called The Addams Family, which was reviled by the critics. Reviled. Jackie Hoffman, who was in it, said, Jesus, even gay men don't like this fucking music. But it didn't seem to matter to the public, because they just wanted to see those characters they wanted, and they liked, and it was the notion of all of us in it, and it succeeded in spite of what had been said about it. But it gave me some time to think. At the same time, Charles Isherwood, who was then a critic at the New York Times, wrote this a lovely piece about me, a kind of a career assessment. I guess he felt sorry for me being trapped in the Addams Family. And he wrote this lovely piece about my career. And he said, I was like I was the greatest stage entertainer of the last decade. And as flattering as this piece was, I can find the dark cloud in any silver lining. And the word entertainer sort of irked me. And I thought, is that how I'm seen at that point? I don't know how long I've been an actor, 35 years or so at that point. And I was like, I'm an actor. I'm not an entertainer. And I thought, I need to do something. I need to shake things up. I need to challenge myself. I need to challenge the audience, because I think I have more to offer as an actor. And I wonder if I can do that. I wonder if it's even possible to shift people's perception. Because people like to categorize you. They like to put you in a box, and you don't come out of that box. Just stay in the box and do what we like you to do. And so I thought, how do I do that? And then I had read this interview in Variety with Bob Falls, the director, and he was the artistic director of the Goodman Theater in Chicago, and Brian Dennehy, and they had a long artistic relationship and did many plays in Chicago and some of them came to New York, like Death of a Salesman. Long Day's Journey. And Brian Dennehy was a very old friend of mine of 30 years. We had known each other. And they were talking about revisiting The Iceman Cometh. Brian had done it in 1990 in Chicago, and it was a huge success. I'm surprised it didn't come into New York. But they were talking about revisiting it and Brian taking on the role of Larry Slade, and who could play Hickey. And so I very I don't know why. I just said that's it. That's what I need to do. Something like that. That would certainly shake things up. So I wrote Bob Falls, and I explained. I'd read this article, and I said I'd like to put myself forward if you do Iceman, and here's why. Here's my concept for it, and he wrote me back and said, we were just talking off the top of our heads. There is no production planned, but he said if you would like to do it, let's get together and discuss it. And so eventually I did. I went to Chicago. I wanted to do it in Chicago, and who had the rights? Scott Rudin. And then he wasn't going to give them to the Goodman Theater. Yeah, so I had to, it's his favorite pastime. So I had to call him and say, please, I just want to do. I'm not looking. This isn't a pre-Broadway tryout. I just want to do this play, and I want to do it in Chicago, and I want to do it with Dennehy and Bob Falls. And so he said, okay, and that really was a life-changing experience, because of the demands of that piece are just extraordinary. And it's as Dennehy said, well, other than Lear, you only picked the most difficult role ever written. He was Brian was just, he's someone else. Fuck, this is what happens when you get old.
Someone get this man a tissue.
You just start crying a lot. Anyway, he was such a mentor and champion of mine, doing that part and doing it together, doing it with him was so important to me and Bob. And then, and eventually we did it at the Brooklyn Academy, and it was, that thing with, it's O'Neill. I highly recommend O'Neill if you want to shake things up, because, nobody writes like that anymore. And the kind of, I can remember reading in this interview with Colleen Dewhurst where she had started to do O'Neill, and she said, oh, it's ridiculous. In one paragraph, it's just, how do you do this stuff? And it is, he's asking you to go as far as he's going in the writing, and to jump off this cliff with him, and you've got to surrender to it, and if you do, that's when it works. Giving yourself over to it, because he's Iceman, he's asking you to go to the darkest places in your soul, and the places you didn't even know existed. And so it is once you've been through it, it changes everything. It changed certainly for me how I work, how I approach things. It changed everything.
And maybe leads to something. A lot of the stuff you just said could describe. I got a chance to see Angels in America. You as Roy Cohn, talk about a ferocious performance, ferocious human being. I guess we've now learned Roy Cohn might be the most consequential human being to our sad times we live in now.
Yeah, that's right. He has a lot to answer for. Yeah.
But to be in that head, it's one thing to be in the producers and these things that just bring sheer joy from an audience, but it's a different, I would imagine, a different energy, a different level of satisfaction going through O'Neill, Kushner,
but
it's
tough doing stuff like that, like Iceman, and I was just lucky that a few other things came along, and in television as well, and it's more serious things, and that's really what led to, I think, being asked to play Roy Cohn, which was, Roy Cohn is just, in that play, this is not the real human being who was vile, but that character in the play, that's just, let me tell you, it's heaven. It's heaven because it's just one of the greatest parts ever written. It was just the most thrilling thing to do. 7.5 hours, and those 2 show days when you did the whole thing. I mean, that's what, you realize then what theater can be it really is a communal experience, and the people who would come and be there and then go out and have dinner and talk about it and come back for the perestroika. That was just the greatest experience. It doesn't come along very often, material like that.
It seems to me, coming full circle, I mean, you talked about how this has been the best television experience of your life doing mid-century modern, and then I look at the recent film work. I mean, we were talking backstage about Beau is Afraid, and like when someone like Ari Aster thinks about you, like the coolest out there younger filmmaker is thinking about you. You're in something like Dix the Musical, which is as out there and insane as you get. I mean, do you find that you found, I don't know, like an interesting new niche in film and TV where...
Not at all.
No.
No, it was just a moment, and it passed.
No, it has. That's not true.
It was, I had an A24 love affair for 1 year.
Well, what are you looking for in film and TV? What don't they think of you for?
That was just Ari, contacting me about that, and then Dix the Musical was just obviously I read it and I was like, holy fuck. And then then they said Larry Charles was going to direct it, and I love Larry Charles, and we had a couple of Zooms to discuss it. And then I said I've got to meet these 2 young guys, Aaron Jackson and Josh Sharp. They had done this as a sketch at Upright Citizens Brigade when it was called Fucking Identical Twins. Their twisted version of The Parent Trap, in which they played all the parts. And so I said, well, let me have dinner with them and meet them and discuss this. And then, 4 hours later, and many cosmopolitans, I said, well, I guess we're making a movie. And I just admired. I admired their chutzpah, the audacity of it, and we're not. And as Aaron used to say, well, we're not doing it to upset people. We're doing it. We're not doing it for the people who won't like it. We're making this for the people who will like it. And it was born to be a cult film, but great fun. I mean, they're really smart guys. I mean, for something so deeply silly and absurd, they're really smart guys and very funny, and I loved them. They were like the gay sons I never had. So I was, we made a movie musical in 21 days. And, and I got to, Megan Mullally is an old friend, and so I knew that if she played my ex-wife, it would, that she would, she's just phenomenal. She's just an inspired comedian and singer and extraordinary singer. And so that was just, we just had a blast. And anytime Megan can improvise, she's in heaven. And it was just, we had a great time. And, and so it's exciting to work with young people and take a chance on somebody like Aaron and Josh, or work with this, somebody as brilliant as Ari Aster and be a part of that. But those projects are, I don't think anybody saw them. They kind of came and went very quickly, unless every once in a while someone will bring up, Beau is Afraid. But
if you see it, you never forget it. We'll put it that way. Come on.
Well, sure. It's like what is it, 5 hours? It just goes on.
It's amazing.
It goes on and on and on. But it's fascinating. And, to get to work with Joaquin Phoenix and Amy Ryan, it was, I had a great time. But I'd love to think it could lead to interesting film roles, but not so far.
We're manifesting tonight. Okay, time is running short. A couple audience questions. This actually segues well out of you talking about Amy Ryan and Joaquin. Do you have a dream scene partner, an actor you've never worked with you want to work with?
An actor I've never worked with that I would like to work with? Oh, well, there's so many. Who would an actor I'd like to work with? I never... well, yeah, that's good. Yeah, who would be good for me to partner with?
We're a filmmaker. Anything jump to mind?
Well, yeah, there's dozens. Yeah, anybody. Scorsese, give me a call. I mean, there's lots of people. I'd love to work with Wes Anderson. That'd be an interesting combo. Actors. Ryan Gosling, I'd like to work with.
There you go.
I think he's hilariously funny.
He is. He's got.
Ryan Gosling, isn't he?
It's almost annoying. Someone that handsome has that such good comic timing.
He's a great actor, but he's screamingly funny.
Yeah.
He's so good at comedy, and I could play his alcoholic uncle. I don't know.
I'm somewhat surprised with all these movie musicals. Do they not come calling? Is that of interest to you to be in any of these ginormous cash cow movie musicals that they're making every other month, it seems?
I don't know if they're cash cows. What was the Wicked? That
Wicked,
was. There was a moment where I was the wizard role was an idea, but then it was a conflict with something I was doing, so that might have been, but it didn't. It really didn't get very far. No one is asking me. I'm sort of retired from musicals anyway. I mean, I can get through, Dick's the Musical, or, I had to sing in this animated film. Titus Burgess and I played these called Spellbound. We did for Netflix. It was Netflix, and we were these two oracles, the Oracle of the Sun and the Oracle of the Moon. Sure. Yeah, but they wrote it like they were a gay couple. So anyway, we had a song in that Alan Menken song. I don't know. What can I say?
You're a busy man. Mid-century modern's keeping you busy.
Well, yeah, I hope it will keep me busy for a while, but we'll see what happens.
All right, we're going to end with this. The happy, sad, confused, profoundly random questions for you, Nathan. These are more rapid fire. Just tell me first thing that comes to mind. Are you a dog or a cat person?
Dog.
Correct answer, yes. Do you collect anything?
Just regrets.
What's the wallpaper on your phone?
Oh, it's just it is just whatever the blue orb.
Is that the Earth?
The Earth?
Yeah.
I think it's that way. It's just black and the blue. There was a picture of this. My husband and I, during the pandemic, we rescued two dogs. One was a much older dog named Bernadette, who was a beagle, and then a younger dog, Woody, who was a mix, and he was just about 10 months old, and we. And I didn't want two dogs, but my husband said we have to take this older dog, and because no one will want her because she's old and she's 10 years old, and I so I gave in, and of course she and I bonded profoundly. I'm now going to cry again. So I put her picture on my phone, but every time I opened up my phone, I would start crying. So I said I can't. So because we only had her for 4 years, but she was the greatest, sweetest dog. Yeah.
Who's the last actor you were mistaken for?
last actor I was mistaken
Does
for.
it ever happen?
Oh, sure. I always go to, Jason Alexander, but no, I don't. I know who did this. It doesn't. Yeah, that doesn't happen very
There's
often.
only one Nathan Lane.
Oh, well, aren't you sweet?
What's the worst note a director has ever given you?
Do it better. It's worse when they don't say anything. You just keep doing it over and over. And you're like, what exactly are we looking for? No, I know that's I think I've seen you ask this question before. It is like a horrible thing, what directors say or don't say, or,
And in the spirit of happy, sad, confused, who's an actor, you see them on screen, it always makes you happy. You're in a better mood. Actor on screen, I'm happier because this person's on screen.
Oh, well, that's a lot of people. Always makes me happy.
Yeah, you're in a good mood.
Okay. Donald O'Connor.
Great. Love it. A movie that makes you sad, makes you cry, makes you tear up, always.
A movie that makes me sad?
Yeah.
Oh, God. Oh, Jesus. That's, well. What? Mousetrap? No.
Always a comedian in the audience.
Yeah, Mousetrap. The people always call it that, Mouse Hunt.
Right.
It was called Mouse Hunt. Mouse Hunt became like a cult film for kids who saw it at the time, because it was like a Coen Brothers movie for children, and it was very dark. And I found that certain people who had seen it as children loved it and would bring it up to me, and also I found Russian cab drivers loved it. There would be a guy putting on deodorant in front of the cab, and he would turn around and say, "What are you in the Mouse movie?" And I would say, "Yeah," and he would say, "This movie is funniest movie ever made. You trying to get rid of mouse for 2 hours. Funny. This is very good movie." Well, what's the saddest? I don't know. The one that comes to mind was Manchester by the Sea.
That's a sad movie. That scene, the two of them.
That's a sad movie.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's a killer.
No more tears tonight. And a
Well,
food.
Kenny Lonergan, brilliant.
And a food that makes you confused. You don't get it. Why do people eat that?
Oh, okay. A food that makes you confused. Oh, well, that's good. That's such a good question. Marzipan.
Great. What's the point? What are they doing?
What are they doing with that? Yeah, it just looks like old candles melted together. Here, eat this. That'll hold you.
Well, he's returning to Broadway in What's Up with Marzipan, starring Nathan Lane, coming soon.
What's up with marzipan?
This has been such a delight, sir. You're always amazing, no matter what kind of genre you're in. It's great to see you in something like Mid-Century Modern, which is going to make a lot of people very happy. It drops on Hulu March 28th. Check it out. I'm sorry for the tears. I didn't mean it, but thank you for being so open. New York, give it up one more time for the great Nathan Lane, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
And so ends another edition of Happy, Sad, Confused. Remember to review, rate, and subscribe to this show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm a big podcast person. I'm Daisy Ridley, and I definitely wasn't pressured to do this by Josh.